There are a lot of really interesting fashion trends going on right now, and one of the ones that has caught my eye the most is this trend for subversive basics, which are items of clothing that are in really classic silhouettes and usually also a very neutral color palette, and they have these really neat asymmetrical cutouts and layering effects that make them super visually interesting. In the description box, I'm going to link a really great video I found on TikTok. It's from a creator called The Algorithm, and it's just a great video that explains this whole trend and shows examples, and it's much more concise than what I could do. I like to start my projects with a sketch because it's a really helpful roadmap, especially with a project like this where I have a bunch of overlapping pieces. This is going to be a high-necked bodysuit. I am going to put some snaps in at the crotch for convenience. And depending on how stretchy this fabric ends up being, I may have to put in an opening at the back of the neck. Any area where I've colored in peach is where I'm going to have my actual skin showing through. And all of these cutout edges are going to be finished using some elastic. Now, a lot of the pieces I was inspired by used really thin sheer fabrics and used a lot more layers, but since the fabric I'm going to be using is a slightly thicker white spandex, I can't really get away with doing that many layers and getting those to lay flat in the seams, so instead I've gone with only really 2 overlapping pieces that will hopefully eliminate a lot of the bulk but still give me that really nice layered look. So I pulled out my mannequin and put on all of my style lines with tape. This is to make sure that all those curves I drew will actually look good on my body, as well as to get a good idea for what the back of this is going to look like and where I'm going to need to put seams in my pattern pieces. So since this is really asymmetrical and kind of freeform, I actually draped it right on the mannequin, and before I got to the second sleeve, I ran out of fabric, so this side gets a sleeve and this side is just getting an armhole binding. So now that I have this first segment done, I'm going to do the shoulder seams of the other piece and then I'm going to weave them together. So all the edges on the cutouts have to be finished. I'm finishing them with elastic, and I'll show you how I'm doing that in just a second. I have this 3/8 inch elastic from a really big spool that I got for cheap a long time ago. But if you're doing this project and you're doing even more layers than I am, this project eats up a ton of elastic as well as quite a bit of thread. I've already gone through 2 bobbins and I'm on my 3rd, so just a heads up. So to finish off these edges using just a regular elastic, I'm applying it to the wrong side of my fabric using a medium-sized zigzag stitch. I'm stretching it very slightly as I go, and I'm making sure that I'm going really slowly around curves. I'm going to go around the entire cutout edge like this, and then we'll go on to the next step. So once I have that elastic all stitched down, I'm going to turn it to the inside and basically make a little single fold hem. Then I'm going to use a zigzag stitch and sew this down from the right side of the fabric. So from the outside, your finished edge will look like this, with a nice clean edge and a single line of zigzag stitching visible. And then from the inside, you'll see 2 lines of zigzag stitching, and you'll have your raw edge as well as the edge of your elastic. So today I was able to get the whole pattern done, cut out, and I've gotten it to a stage where it looks like actual clothing. And tomorrow I'm going to stitch my 2 interlocking pieces together, finish up the leg holes, and add the sleeve, and that should be it. I used some hook and eye tape for the opening that's going to be right at the crotch. That way this is a little bit easier to put on and take off. This is a little bit of a puzzle to get on, and I think I'm going to go back later and tack down some of these crossover spots just so it's a little bit faster to put on. I wore it with just some regular jeans and these chunky white boots. So now that the whole project is finished, and you should have just seen a clip showing it on, let's talk about some of the stuff that went well and some of the stuff that didn't go so well. One of the things I do think went well is the translation from sketch to finished garment. I think that these look like they're the same garment, even though there have been some changes, like eliminating the right sleeve, and the size of these cutouts is quite a bit larger than is shown in the sketch, but overall I think it translated really well from 2D drawing to 3D garment. Like with any project, there were a couple things that didn't go quite to plan. This is missing a sleeve because I ran out of fabric. I don't really mind the 1 sleeve look though. I think I would prefer 2 sleeves, but it's not a big deal. I think it still looks interesting and it looks like it's purposeful. The cutouts are slightly larger than I initially intended, because I accommodated for a smaller size of elastic with my seam allowance than I actually ended up using. Again, not a huge deal, it just means this is a little bit more revealing. It still covers everything though, and I'm not in danger of anything slipping out. There's really only one thing I would say went wrong with this piece, which is the way that this kind of crop top layer fits. I hadn't realized that there was so much of a difference between where the bust point on my mannequin sits and where it sits on my actual body, so it ended up not fitting quite as tight and low as I wanted it to right across the underbust, which means that it rides up a little and it can expose whatever I'm wearing underneath it. Now, it's not going to expose anything other than that. It's plenty tight enough, and if I move my arms around, like, it's not going anywhere. It's just a little bit annoying. Overall, this was a really interesting project. It's not super similar to what I make mostly, and it's really different from what I normally wear, so it's always an interesting challenge to give myself to make something that I'm just not familiar with at all. I think it looks a lot like the costumes in The Fifth Element though, especially the costume Lilu wears at the beginning of the movie, which is white spandex with a lot of crisscrossing straps. And that's super okay with me because I really like that movie and I love the costumes in it. I also do like that it gives me an excuse to wear these shoes, which I think go super well with it and are super fun to stomp around in. Let me know in the comments section how you would wear a piece like this. I'm always super interested to hear how other people would wear these more unusual items especially, so please let me know. And if you're interested, all of my other social media, as well as any links I mentioned in the video, are going to be in the description. Have a great day, and don't forget to try something new!